It's 5 p.m. across India, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Ollie, what are the big stories that you have for us today?
Well, there are lots of them, Tanvi, today. It's 11:30 a.m. here in London, 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, a bridge disaster in Baltimore, a further wait for Julian Assange, and New Zealand is the latest to raise claims of hacking by Beijing, which China denies. First, the headlines.
Rescuers search for survivors after a container ship collides with the Key Bridge in Baltimore, Maryland. The city's fire department terms it a mass casualty incident. Governor declares a state of emergency. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange gets a temporary pardon from being extradited to the United States. London High Court rules the US needs to provide more assurances in the case. New Zealand joins the US and the UK in charging China for state-sponsored cyber attacks. Wellington raises the matter of a hacking attempt on its parliament in 2021 with its Chinese counterparts. And India supports the Philippines in upholding its national sovereignty, says External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, amid the Southeast Asian nation's maritime dispute with China over the South China Sea. First news from America. A major 2.57-kilometer long bridge collapsed in the U.S. port of Baltimore in the early hours of Tuesday after being struck by a container ship. Rescuers started looking for people who plunged into the Patapsco River. According to Baltimore City Fire Department, as many as 20 people fell into the river along with numerous vehicles. The fire department spokesperson termed it a mass casualty incident, multi-agency event, and said that the rescue operation could extend for many days. A live video posted on YouTube showed the ship hitting the bridge, after which major portions of the bridge collapsed into the river. Maryland's Transportation Authority said all lanes were closed in both directions and traffic is being detoured. The chief of Baltimore City Fire Department said that they have rescued 2 people so far and still are searching for people underwater and on the ship.
It arrived on scene and reported a complete collapse of the Key Bridge. We were also given information at that time that there were likely multiple people on the bridge at the time of the collapse, and that as a result, multiple people were in the water. We were able to remove 2 people from the water. We have multiple resources. We are still very much in an active search and rescue posture at this point, and we will continue to be for some time. We have a large area that we have to search. This includes on the surface of the water, subsurface, as well as on the deck of the ship itself.
DD India's Simon Marx joins us live on the story now from Washington, D.C. Simon, this bridge collapse is being reported as a very large incident and mass casualties are being feared. What is the latest do you have?
Yeah, this is an absolutely substantial man-made disaster that the United States is waking up to here on Tuesday morning. The incident occurred at around 1:30 in the morning as a massive container ship, the Dali, was departing from the port in Baltimore and beginning a journey to Sri Lanka that was expected to take around 3 weeks, but it never made it past the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Bridge, which is an absolutely pivotal roadway that connects parts of Maryland around the Baltimore area to the eastern and northern shore of the state. It is a bridge that has been used many, many times by the vast majority of people that live in this area of the United States. It is part of Interstate Highway 695, and as you can see in the video, the tanker collides with the central support structure of that bridge, which was opened back in 1972, and within seconds the entire central span of the bridge collapses into the river. The mayor of Baltimore has described the video of the incident as looking like something out of an action movie. So rapidly does that bridge collapse. Now, even though this was taking place at 1:30 in the morning, there will, we know, have been cars and trucks that were making their way across that bridge. It's also now being reported by the authorities in Baltimore that there were some transportation workers who were repairing a concrete section of the bridge. At least 7 people are known to have been swept into the river, possibly more. 2 have been pulled to safety, 1 of them in serious condition, but a major search and rescue operation underway now to find the others who have reportedly been missing, and of course to try and understand just how many people may have been caught up in this disaster, because at the moment that number is unknowable, although there are cameras on the bridge and the authorities will be looking at the videotape of the incident to try and get a sense of just how many people, cars, vehicles may have been swept into the river as a result of this collapse. An absolutely massive emergency response now underway. The governor of Maryland has declared this a state of emergency, and I think we're just beginning to understand the impact of this on the region, because that bridge is now going to be out of commission for months, if not years, while repairs are made to it, and that is going to have a seismic impact on the region's economy. So important a connection is that bridge locally.
Okay. Simon, what are you gathering? Is there a terrorism angle to this accident, or is it too early to ask?
No, there's no indication whatsoever that there is a terrorism angle to this, Tanvi. Indeed, the authorities in Baltimore say there is no evidence to suggest that this was intentional. Obviously, they are focusing relentlessly on the crew and staff aboard the Dali, that tanker that smashed into the central support span of the bridge. It's believed that there were 2 pilots on board the ship at the time. That would be normal because ships of that size are usually guided out of the port of Baltimore by pilots, and obviously something catastrophically wrong has taken place in terms of the navigation. No staff or crew from the ship are reported to have been missing or any other way threatened by this disaster. The ship sits exactly where it struck that central support span, and of course will now be the focus of a massive investigation. The National Transportation Safety Board here in Washington, D.C. will be dispatching teams to the scene. They investigate all transportation accidents in this country, and I suspect that later in the day we will be hearing from President Biden, who assuredly, given his roots in the region in Delaware, will be very familiar personally with this bridge as the White House monitors the ongoing investigation into all of this. Questions, of course, also for the owners of the vessel and for the people that hired the vessel to begin its journey to Sri Lanka, a journey, of course, that it is now absolutely not going to be able to complete as it becomes the central focus of the investigation into this disaster.
Thank you. Thank you. Simon Marx reporting for us from Washington, D.C. On to Europe now, the other big story of the day. London's High Court has given a crucial ruling on whether WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange can have another chance to appeal against his extradition from Britain to the United States. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, would you say a crucial verdict for Julian Assange and his style of journalism?
Well, Tanvi, the immediate impact appears to be more waiting for now for Julian Assange, with London's High Court giving the United States 3 weeks to provide a series of assurances. If those assurances are not forthcoming, then there would be leave to appeal for Julian Assange. US prosecutors are seeking to put Julian Assange on trial on 18 counts related to WikiLeaks' high-profile release of vast troves of confidential US military records and diplomatic cables. Assange's legal battles in Britain began in 2010. He subsequently spent 7 years holed up in Ecuador's embassy here in London before he was dragged out and jailed in 2019 for breaching bail conditions. Well, we can go live now to DD India's Stuart Smith, who is at the High Court in London. Stuart, tell us, what exactly has the court ruled and what therefore comes next?
The two High Court judges making this decision have already spent weeks deliberating, but it seems there was more information, or at least more certainty, they needed from the United States in order to decide whether an extradition can go ahead or not. They are looking specifically for 3 pieces of information, 3 assurances from the United States. First of all, that if Julian Assange is extradited, then he can experience a fair hearing under the First Amendment to the US Constitution, the one that guarantees freedom of speech. Secondly, that his nationality, his Australian nationality, will not prejudice that hearing. And thirdly, that he will not be sentenced to death if convicted. Now, the US has 3 weeks to respond to that. If they don't respond, then the default position is Julian Assange will be entitled to that full hearing. A process that's already gone on for more than a decade could continue, and that's why this is being considered a partial victory for Julian Assange, because he is not being deported outright. But if the High Court here in London believes that those 3 assurances are satisfactorily made by the United States, then it would be a case of him being extradited from the UK, though what still remains is that option to appeal to the European Court of Human Rights outside the UK justice system, which is most likely his final attempt to stop extradition if UK courts decide that he can be sent to the United States. His supporters here seem largely happy with that decision, though his wife Stella Assange, also a lawyer herself, have suggested that she is astounded by the decision because he's already been held in a maximum security prison here in the UK for 5 years already. So it's more waiting for him, with the outcome still uncertain.
Stuart Smith at London's High Court for DD India. Thank you. Now, after the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, Qatar's Foreign Ministry spokesperson has said that this has not had an immediate impact on talks in Doha. Talks mediated by Egypt and Qatar continue, and officials from Israel's spy agency Mossad remain in Qatar for further discussions. Israel has accused Hamas of making unrealistic demands and claims Hamas terrorists are uninterested in a deal. Israel has opted to withdraw a delegation to Washington following the United States' decision not to veto that UNSC resolution, which was passed on Monday. DD India's Sarah Coates sent us this report from Tel Aviv.
Qatar's Foreign Ministry spokesperson says that indirect negotiations talks are continuing in Doha between Israel and Hamas. This is despite Israel pulling its negotiating team from the Qatari capital after Hamas seemingly rejected an offer saying it wants a comprehensive ceasefire. Well, the Israeli Prime Minister's office responding on X, saying that this is proof that Hamas isn't interested in continuing talks and a sad testament to the damage caused by the United Nations Security Council resolution, adding that Israel will not cave to Hamas's delusional demands and will press on with this military campaign in Gaza, not only to release these hostages, but to dismantle Hamas. And there is really a lot of concern over this southernmost city of Rafah. This is where some 1.3 million internally displaced Palestinians are sheltering. And this is why Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant is right now in the United States meeting with his US counterpart Lloyd Austin. They are discussing Israel's potential military operation in Rafah. And this is certainly something that is extremely concerning to the United States. We've heard from President Biden and the Vice President Kamala Harris both saying it would be a mistake, it would be a red line. Harris coming out just a couple of days ago to say that she has studied these maps and there is simply no place for these some 1.3 million people to go. Now, this is why this Israeli delegation was supposed to be heading to Washington to discuss alternatives to this operation in Rafah. But as we do know, that was swiftly pulled on the back of this UNSC resolution passing, with Israel very, very angry that there was no veto by the United States, that it actually let it pass, really deepening the rift between Israel and Washington. Sarah Coates reporting from Tel Aviv for DD India.
Turkish authorities have detained at least 147 people over suspected ties to the Islamic State group in nationwide operations. In a post on the social media platform X, Turkey's Interior Minister said the suspects were found to have been active within the Islamic State group. He said a total of 2,733 suspects belonging to the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant were detained in 1,316 operations during the year 2023-24. Turkey designated ISIL as a terrorist organization in 2013 and has been attacked by the group multiple times since then. US and British officials on Monday have filed charges and imposed sanctions and accused Beijing of sweeping cyber espionage. Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden here in the UK accused Chinese hackers of trying to break into email accounts of British lawmakers who've been critical of China, and said a separate Chinese entity was behind a hack of Britain's electoral watchdog that compromised the data of millions. In response, Britain has imposed sanctions on 2 people and 1 company linked to state-backed Chinese group APT31. Britain also says an unidentified Chinese state-affiliated hacking group was behind an attack in 2021-2022 on the Electoral Commission.
I can confirm today that Chinese state-affiliated actors were responsible for 2 malicious cyber campaigns targeting both our democratic institutions and parliamentarians. First, the compromise of the United Kingdom Electoral Commission between 2021 and 2022, which was announced last summer. And second, attempted reconnaissance activity against UK parliamentary accounts in a separate campaign in 2021.
The New Zealand government says it has raised concerns with China about its involvement in a state-sponsored cyber hack on New Zealand's parliament in 2021, which was uncovered by the country's intelligence services. New Zealand's foreign minister has put out a statement saying that foreign interference of this nature is unacceptable, and we have urged China to refrain from such activity in future. It came, as we've been hearing, as Britain and the United States accused China of that wide-sweeping cyber espionage campaign that Beijing denies. An 8th suspect in Friday's Moscow concert hall attack has been remanded in pre-trial custody by a Russian court. State news agency RIA reported that Kyrgyzstan-born Alisher Kasimov was accused of providing accommodation to the 4 Tajik men accused of carrying out the attack, in which at least 139 people died. The 4 men were remanded in custody on terrorism charges for carrying out the deadliest attack in 2 decades inside Russia. 3 others, also of Tajik origin, were remanded in custody on suspicion of complicity. The Secretary of Russia's Security Council and a close ally of President Vladimir Putin, Nikolai Patrushev, claimed on Tuesday that Ukraine was behind the Moscow attacks. This statement came after the Russian President Vladimir Putin acknowledged on Monday that last week's deadly attack at the concert outside Moscow was carried out by radical Islamists. He, however, suggested the shooting fits in a wider campaign of intimidation by Ukraine, something Kiev denies. And that's it from me here in London for today. Tanvi, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Ollie. Ollie Barrett joining us from London. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. US Supreme Court to decide fate of abortion pill today after it overturned the constitutional right to an abortion nearly 2 years ago. And tough day for Pakistan. 6 killed in a terrorist attack in the country's second largest naval air base in Balochistan, while 5 Chinese nationals killed in an explosion in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gate.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Tanvi Taneja. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on Tuesday reiterated India's support to the Philippines in upholding its national sovereignty. Dr. Jaishankar was interacting with media in Manila with his Filipino counterpart, Enrique Manalo.
I take this opportunity to firmly reiterate India's support to the Philippines for upholding its national sovereignty. As the world changes, it is essential that countries like India and the Philippines cooperate more closely to shape the emerging order.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar called on Philippines President Bongbong Marcos in Manila on Tuesday. The minister conveyed the greetings of President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi to President Marcos. In a social media post, Dr. S. Jaishankar said that he valued his warm sentiments towards India-Philippines partnership. The minister also noted that Marcos' guidance for taking the ties to new areas will strengthen collaboration between the two democracies. Earlier, Jaishankar held a meeting with his counterpart Enrique Manalo in Manila. India's External Affairs Minister stated that the two democracies are committed to a rules-based order and he looked forward to intensifying these ties. In a social media post, the minister noted that wide-ranging discussion on politics, defense, security and maritime cooperation, trade and investment, infrastructure development, cooperation, education, digital technology, culture and consular domains was held between the two leaders. The Indian minister said that the two leaders also exchanged views on global, regional, multilateral issues, including that of Indo-Pacific, ASEAN, West Asia, Ukraine, NAM and the United Nations. On to Pakistan now. A suicide bomber rammed a vehicle into a convoy of Chinese engineers working on a dam project in northwestern province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa on Tuesday, which led to the death of 6 people in the incident. This is the third major attack on Chinese interests in Pakistan in a week after the attack on an airbase and a strategic port in the southwest province of Balochistan. The engineers were on their way from Islamabad to their camp at the dam construction site in Dasu in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So far, no one has claimed responsibility for Tuesday's attack. Pakistan's second largest naval airbase in Balochistan also came under an armed terrorist attack. Today, the Majid Brigade of the banned Balochistan Liberation Army, BLA, had claimed responsibility for the assault. Terrorists attacked Pakistan Naval Air Base, in which at least one paramilitary soldier was killed, while Pakistani security forces killed all 5 assailants in retaliatory fire. Back to the United States. The fate of a commonly used abortion pill will be considered by the US Supreme Court on Tuesday in the High Court's first abortion case since it overturned the constitutional right to an abortion nearly 2 years ago. DD India's Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
Well, the outcome of this case could have far-reaching consequences for access to abortion across the country, as well as potentially invite ideological challenges to other approved medications like contraception and COVID-19 vaccines. A Christian conservative medical group that opposes abortion rights, the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, has argued that the US's Food and Drug Administration did not adequately study the safety risks of mifepristone, and it acted unlawfully when it relaxed the rules surrounding its use. But in legal briefs, medical professionals have described the drug as among the safest medications ever approved by the FDA.
And next we take a look at other stories making news around the world. South Korea's shoppers snatched up green onions on sale at a Seoul supermarket as worries grew over higher produce prices. In several videos surfacing online, customers were seen snatching up green onions piled up for sale at below market prices on government subsidies. Heavy rain and hailstone hit parts of eastern and central China, leading to severe flooding that trapped vehicles and causing heavy property losses. Ningguang city of Anhui province experienced heavy downpour, while excised hailstones rained down on Yiwu city of East China's Zhejiang province. Hong Kong is seeking to revive its art scene to become a regional cultural hub. But some art critics have said that they were concerned that a new security law may hinder creativity ahead of a series of events that include Art Basel in Hong Kong. That's all for this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.